When humanity first reached the stars, we expected to find wonders beyond imagination. What we didn't expect was to become the most feared species in the galaxy. Not for our weapons or technology, but for something far more terrifying, our refusal to stay down when beaten. The Zephyrian Coalition had ruled the Outer Rim for 3,000 years. They had crushed rebellions, absorbed entire civilizations, and turned conquest into an art form. When they encountered humanity's small exploration fleet near the Kepler system, they expected another quick victory, another species to add to their collection of servants. They were wrong. What happened next would echo across every inhabited world in the galaxy. It would make hardened warriors wake up screaming and cause entire fleets to change course rather than face a single human ship. The Coalition learned that day that some species don't just fight back. They evolve through violence, growing stronger with each blow, more dangerous with each defeat. And when they finally begged for peace, when their mighty empire crumbled before humanity's relentless advance, they would discover the humans have very long memories and an even longer reach for justice. Captain Sarah Chun stood on the observation deck of the UES Endeavour, watching the stars blur past as her ship dropped out of hyperspace. The Kepler system stretched before them, a collection of 6 planets orbiting a young yellow star. After 18 months of deep space exploration, this was their final stop before returning to Earth with their survey data. Captain, we're picking up some interesting readings from the 4th planet, called Lieutenant Rodriguez from the science station. High concentrations of rare Earth metals and what looks like geometric patterns on the surface that could indicate artificial structures. Sarah moved to the tactical display, her weathered hands clasping behind her back. At 52, she had spent more years in space than most people spend in careers, but the thrill of discovery still quickened her pulse. Any signs of current habitation? Negative on immediate life signs, but the structures appear intact. Could be ruins, but they're remarkably well preserved if so. Rodriguez manipulated the display, zooming in on what appeared to be vast crystalline spires rising from a desert landscape. Permission to launch a survey probe? Granted. Take us into standard orbit and begin full spectrum analysis. Sarah turned to her communications officer. Jenkins, start recording everything. If this is our first contact with alien architecture, I want every detail documented. The next few hours passed in the familiar rhythm of scientific exploration. The probe confirmed that the structures were indeed artificial, composed of materials unknown to human science. The geometric precision was staggering, with mathematical relationships that suggested a highly advanced civilization. Yet there were no energy signatures, no signs of current occupation. Captain, Jenkins suddenly called out, his voice tight with concern. I'm picking up multiple hyperspace signatures approaching our position. Vectors suggest they're coming from outside the system. Sarah felt her stomach drop. Deep space was vast, and the chances of encountering another species by accident were virtually zero. This was either an incredible coincidence or something much more concerning. How many contacts? 12 ships, Captain. They're big, much bigger than us. On the main screen, space shimmered as 12 massive vessels emerged from hyperspace in perfect formation. Each ship was easily 3 times the size of the Endeavour, their hulls a dark metallic blue that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Strange symbols glowed along their sides, pulsing in a rhythm that somehow felt threatening. Jenkins, open all channels. Standard first contact protocols. Sarah straightened her uniform, knowing that this moment would be recorded in history books regardless of how it ended. Unknown vessels. This is Captain Sarah Chun of the United Earth ship Endeavour. We are on a peaceful scientific mission. Please respond. The response came immediately, but not in the form she expected. A beam of energy lanced out from the lead ship, striking their probe and vaporizing it instantly. The message was clear. Humans were not welcome here. Shields up, Sarah barked. All hands to battle stations. Jenkins, try hailing them again. Before Jenkins could respond, a voice filled the bridge. It was translated through their universal communication system, but the coldness in the tone transcended language barriers. Primitive species, you have trespassed in Zephyrian space. You will surrender your vessel immediately or be destroyed. You have 60 seconds to comply. Sarah's mind raced. Earth's location was stored in their navigation computers, along with information about human colonies and trade routes. If these ships captured the Endeavor, they would have everything they needed to find and attack humanity's homeworlds. Rodriguez, status on weapons and shields? Shields at maximum, but, Captain, their energy output readings are off the charts. If their weapons platforms were seriously outgunned. The young officer's voice remained steady despite the circumstances. 30 seconds, the alien voice announced. Sarah made the decision that would define humanity's relationship with the galaxy. All crew, this is the captain. If we surrender, we give these aliens a roadmap to Earth and every human settlement. We will not be responsible for exposing our species to aggression. We fight. The bridge crew exchanged glances. They all knew the odds, but none of them hesitated. Lieutenant Rodriguez's hands flew over his console, bringing weapons online. Jenkins began broadcasting a warning burst to any human ships that might be monitoring deep space channels. Engineering reported maximum power to shields and engines. Time expired. The alien voice declared with what almost sounded like satisfaction. The lead Zephyrian ship opened fire, and the Endeavor shields flared brilliant white as coherent energy beams hammered against them. The ship shuddered under the assault, but held together. Sarah gripped her command chair as she felt her vessel fighting for its life. Return fire. All weapons. The Endeavor's particle beams and missile batteries unleashed everything they had at the nearest enemy ship. To everyone's surprise, the alien vessel's shields flickered and sparked under the unexpected assault. Humanity's weapons, designed for deep space mining and asteroid clearing, were far more powerful than the aliens had anticipated. Their shields are weakening, Rodriguez called out with barely contained excitement. These things weren't designed to take heavy bombardment. Focus fire on that ship. Show them we're not easy prey. For several minutes, the space around Kepler lit up with weapons fire. The Endeavor, built for exploration but armed for survival, proved tougher than anyone expected. Her shields held against multiple attackers while her weapons carved chunks from enemy hull plating. The crew worked with desperate efficiency, knowing that their performance here would determine not just their own fate, but possibly the fate of their entire species. Then, the inevitable happened. A concentrated barrage from 3 Zephyrian ships struck the Endeavor's port shields simultaneously. The barrier collapsed, and hull plating began to vaporize under alien fire. Hull breach on Deck 7. Emergency force fields are holding, but barely, called the damage control officer. Sarah felt her ship dying beneath her, but she also felt something else, pride. They had shown these aliens that humans were not victims. The tactical display showed significant damage to 3 enemy vessels, with one completely disabled and drifting. Captain, Jenkins said quietly, incoming transmission from the alien fleet. Put it through. The same cold voice filled the bridge, but now there was a note of respect that hadn't been there before. Human vessel, you have fought with unexpected courage. We offer you one final chance to surrender. Submit to boarding, and your crew will be treated according to the conventions of war. Sarah looked around her bridge. Her crew was bloodied, but unbowed, their eyes fixed on her with absolute trust. The ship was dying, but her people were still fighting. She thought of Earth, of the children who played in parks under blue skies, unaware that their future was being decided in the darkness between stars. This is Captain Shun. Our answer is no. We will not surrender our ship or our information to any force that opens fire without provocation. If you want this vessel, you'll have to destroy it. A long pause. Then so be it. The final barrage came from all sides simultaneously. The Endeavor's remaining shields collapsed instantly, and multiple hull breaches opened the ship to space. Emergency bulkheads slammed shut, sealing sections of the vessel, but the damage was catastrophic. Sarah felt the deck tilting beneath her feet as the ship's artificial gravity began to fail. Emergency lights bathed everything in red, and the sound of escaping atmosphere provided a constant hiss in the background. She activated the ship's self-destruct sequence, ensuring that Earth's location would die with them. All hands, this is the captain, she broadcast over the ship's internal communications. It has been an honor serving with you. Our sacrifice today protects everyone we've ever loved. Make sure they remember that humans do not kneel. But as the countdown reached its final seconds, something unexpected happened. The weapon's fire stopped. Through the smoke and sparks on a bridge, Sarah could see the alien ships pulling back. "Captain," Rodriguez said, his voice filled with disbelief, "they're withdrawing." "What? What?" Before anyone could answer, a new voice came over the communication system. This one was different, speaking with authority that made the previous commander sound like a subordinate. "Human Captain, I am Fleet Commander Vextar of the Zephyrian Coalition. Your resistance has been noteworthy. We have decided to spare your vessel and crew, but you will come with us as our guest. Your ship will be taken under escort to our nearest facility, where we will discuss terms." Sarah's blood ran cold. The aliens weren't showing mercy. They were taking prisoners. And worse, they were using the word guest with the kind of tone that suggested she would be anything but. "Commander Vextar, I must refuse your offer. We are explorers, not warriors, but we will not submit to capture." "You misunderstand, Captain. This is not a request. Your ship is disabled, your crew is injured, and you are surrounded. You will comply, or we will complete your destruction and take your database cores from the wreckage. The choice is yours." Sarah looked at her crew. They were ready to die for their principles, but dying now would accomplish nothing. If she refused, the aliens would destroy the ship and still get access to human navigation data. If she accepted, there was at least a chance that some of her people might survive to warn Earth. "I need guarantees about my crew's safety. Your crew will be housed appropriately and given medical attention as needed. You have my word as a fleet commander." It was a devil's bargain, but Sarah couldn't see another option. The self-destruct was still counting down, but she could abort it. Her people's lives hung in the balance, and Earth's safety might depend on what she learned in alien captivity. "Stand down the self-destruct," she ordered quietly. Then, louder, "Fleet Commander Vextar, I accept your terms under protest. But I want it recorded that this act of aggression will not be forgotten by my people. Recorded and noted, Captain Shun. You may find that your people's memories are irrelevant to their future." Within hours, the Endeavor was locked in docking clamps aboard a massive Zephyrian carrier. Her crew processed through alien security systems with cold efficiency. Sarah was separated from her people and escorted to what the aliens called dignitary quarters, which looked suspiciously like a very comfortable prison cell. As she sat in the alien chamber, surrounded by technology she couldn't understand, Sarah began to plan. The Zephyrians thought they had won a simple victory over a primitive species, but they had no idea what they had started. Humanity's first contact with an alien civilization had begun with unprovoked aggression and the capture of their people. She thought about the message Jenkins had broadcast just before the battle ended. If any human ships had received it, if Earth knew what happened here, then preparations would already be underway. The Zephyrians might have won this battle, but they had just introduced themselves to a species with a very long tradition of holding grudges. In the darkness of her alien prison, Seraph smiled grimly. The Zephyrians had made their first mistake when they opened fire on an unarmed exploration vessel. Their second mistake was keeping her alive to learn exactly how dangerous that first mistake had been. The galaxy was about to discover that humanity's greatest strength wasn't their technology or their courage. It was their absolute refusal to accept defeat as final. Admiral Marcus Webb stood in the center of Earth's Strategic Command, staring at the holographic display that showed humanity's scattered settlements across known space. Each blue dot represented thousands, sometimes millions of human lives, and every single one of them was now potentially at risk. The emergency message from the Endeavor had reached Earth 3 days ago, and those 72 hours had transformed the entire human civilization from peaceful explorers to a species preparing for war. "Admiral, we've received responses from all colonial governors," reported General Kate Morrison, her gray hair pulled back severely as she reviewed the incoming data. "Every settlement is implementing Defense Protocol 7. Military reserves are being activated, and civilian populations are being moved to secure facilities." Webb nodded grimly. Defense Protocol 7 hadn't been used since the Titan Rebellion 40 years ago, and never on this scale. Every human world was essentially declaring martial law, preparing for siege conditions that might last years. The economic cost alone would be staggering, but the alternative was potentially extinction. What about the fleet's status? Better than expected, sir. We have 43 ships of the line operational, with another 12 coming online within the week. The Mars shipyards are working around the clock, and they're retrofitting civilian vessels with military-grade weapons and shields. Morrison paused, consulting her tablet. The problem isn't ships, Admiral. It's information. We know almost nothing about these Zephyrians except that they're hostile and technologically advanced. Webb studied the tactical display, noting the positions of human vessels throughout known space. 55 ships against an unknown alien fleet that had easily overwhelmed the Endeavor. The mathematics were sobering, but mathematics had never told the complete story of human conflicts. "Sir," called Lieutenant Commander Sarah Okafor from the communications station. "Incoming priority transmission from the Centauri system. It's Admiral Hassan aboard the Defiance." "Put him through." Admiral Rashid Hassan's weathered face appeared on the main screen, his expression grim but determined. Behind him, Webb could see the bustling activity of a ship preparing for combat. "Marcus, we've completed our reconnaissance of the Kepler system. The alien fleet is gone, but we found debris patterns consistent with a major battle. Analysis confirms that our people put up one hell of a fight before being overwhelmed. Any sign of survivors? Negative on the Endeavor itself, but the debris patterns suggest the ship was captured rather than destroyed. There are also traces of alien hull materials, indicating that Captain Chen's people damaged several enemy vessels before being taken." Webb felt a mixture of relief and anger. Relief that his people might still be alive, anger at the circumstances that had put them in danger. "What's your assessment of the alien technology?" "Advanced, but not impossibly so. Their energy weapons are more efficient than ours, and their ships are larger, but our weapons definitely hurt them. The real concern is numbers. Scout drones detected hyperspace signatures indicating a fleet of at least 200 ships moving through this sector." 200 ships. Webb processed that number, comparing it to humanity's total naval strength. In a direct confrontation, the aliens could overwhelm human forces through sheer numbers, but direct confrontation wasn't humanity's only option. "Admiral Hassan, I want you to begin immediate implementation of the Anson Protocol. Use every stealth ship we have to map their fleet movements and identify their command structure. We need to know where they're based and how they're organized." "Understood, sir. And, Marcus, when we do find our people, what are your intentions?" Webb looked around the command center, noting the faces of men and women who had spent their careers believing that humanity's expansion into space would be peaceful. They were learning harsh lessons about the galaxy's true nature, but they were adapting with the resilience that had carried humanity through every previous crisis. "When we find our people, Admiral, we're bringing them home. All of them." The weeks that followed saw humanity transform from explorers to warriors with frightening efficiency. Ship construction accelerated beyond anything previously imagined, with civilian corporations retooling factories to produce military equipment. Research facilities that had been developing new mining techniques suddenly found themselves designing weapons of unprecedented destructive power. Dr. Elena Vasquez, head of the Theoretical Physics Division at Luna University, stood before a gathering of military officials and scientists, explaining her team's latest breakthrough. The Zephyrian ships appear to use a form of energy shielding that deflects conventional weapons by dispersing their energy across a wide area. However, our analysis of the battle debris suggests that sustained, focused bombardment can overwhelm their defensive systems. "What kind of sustained bombardment?" asked General Morrison. "We've developed what we're calling resonance torpedoes. Instead of trying to punch through their shields with brute force, these weapons analyze the shield frequency and create harmonic interference patterns. Essentially, we're using their own defensive technology against them." Admiral Webb leaned forward in his chair. "How effective?" "In simulations, a single resonance torpedo can collapse shields that would normally require sustained bombardment from an entire ship. We're also working on adaptive targeting systems that can adjust in real time to compensate for any changes in their shield frequencies." The meeting continued for hours, covering everything from troop deployment strategies to supply line management. Humanity was preparing for a war unlike anything they had ever fought, against an enemy they barely understood, across distances that made traditional logistics nearly impossible. Meanwhile, in the outer colonies, ships began disappearing. Captain Jennifer Walsh aboard the merchant vessel Prosperity was the first to report direct contact with Zephyrian forces since the Kepler incident. Her ship, carrying medical supplies to the Vega colonies, had been intercepted by a single alien vessel near the shipping lanes. Earth Control, this is the Prosperity. We are under attack by an unidentified alien vessel. They're demanding surrender and threatening to wait. They're broadcasting something. The message that followed chilled everyone who heard it. A cold, mechanical voice speaking perfect English. Human vessel, you will submit to inspection and interrogation. Resistance will result in the destruction of your ship and crew. Your species has been classified as a developing threat to coalition interests. Captain Walsh's response became legendary in the growing mythology of the human resistance. Alien vessel. This is Captain Walsh of the merchant ship Prosperity. We are carrying medical supplies to sick children on Vega Station. If you want to inspect us, you can ask politely like civilized beings. Otherwise, you can go straight to hell. The alien response was swift and brutal. Energy beams lanced out, disabling the Prosperity's engines and communications array. The ship was boarded, its crew taken prisoner, and its cargo holds emptied of anything the aliens considered valuable. Captain Walsh and her crew simply vanished into the vast network of Zephyrian prison ships and labor camps. But they didn't go quietly. Before her ship's communications were cut, Walsh managed to broadcast a detailed description of the alien boarding procedures, their equipment, and their apparent weaknesses. More importantly, she confirmed that the aliens were actively hunting human ships, not just defending territory. The pattern repeated across human space. Civilian ships vanished, their crews disappearing into alien captivity. Each incident provided more intelligence about Zephyrian capabilities and tactics, but at the cost of human lives and freedom. Admiral Webb found himself in the uncomfortable position of allowing these attacks to continue while human forces prepared for a larger response. Every ship lost provided valuable intelligence, but every crew captured represented a failure to protect human citizens. The moral weight of the decisions was crushing, but the strategic reality was undeniable. Sir, Lieutenant Commander Okafor approached his desk with an encrypted datapad. We've received intelligence from Admiral Hassan's reconnaissance teams. They've located what appears to be a major Zephyrian facility in the Ross 248 system. Webb reviewed the data, noting the massive energy signatures and ship concentrations. The facility was enormous, possibly capable of housing thousands of prisoners and dozens of ships. It was also heavily defended, with patrol routes that suggested a sophisticated understanding of human capabilities. Defensive assessments. Significant but not impossible. Dr. Vasquez's resonance torpedoes have completed testing, and we have enough ships to mount a serious assault. The real question is whether we're ready to begin open warfare with an alien civilization. Webb stared at the data, knowing that his decision would define humanity's future relationship with the galaxy. Attacking the facility would mean abandoning any pretense of peaceful coexistence, committing their species to a conflict that might last generations. Then he thought about Captain Chun, about the crews of the Prosperity, and dozens of other ships, about the families waiting for loved ones who might never come home. The aliens had started this conflict with unprovoked aggression. Humanity would finish it on their own terms. Begin preparing the strike force. I want our best ships, our most experienced crews, and every advantage we can give them. We're going to show these Zephyrians that humanity doesn't abandon its own. The next phase of the war would be humanity's first offensive action against an alien civilization. It would also be their first real test of whether courage and determination could overcome superior technology and numbers. In research facilities across human space, scientists worked around the clock to develop new weapons and defensive systems. In shipyards, workers welded armor plating and installed weapons systems on vessels that had never been designed for combat. In training facilities, civilian volunteers learned to operate military equipment with the desperate intensity of people fighting for their species' survival. but perhaps most importantly, in command centers and communication hubs throughout human space, military planners began developing strategies that would eventually transform the nature of warfare itself. They studied every scrap of intelligence from captured alien equipment, analyzed every recorded conversation with Zephyrian commanders, and began to understand that their enemy's greatest strength, their rigid adherence to established protocols, might also be their greatest weakness. The Zephyrian coalition had ruled the outer galaxy for 3,000 years by following predictable patterns of conquest and control. They approached each new species with the same methods that had succeeded countless times before: overwhelming force, followed by incorporation into their rigid hierarchy. They had never encountered a species like humanity, one that viewed every defeat as a learning opportunity and every setback as motivation for innovation. The aliens thought they were fighting a conventional war against a primitive species. Humanity was preparing to teach them that human warfare evolved as rapidly as human technology, and that the species that had once conquered their own world through endless creativity and adaptation was just getting started. Captain Sarah Chun woke to the sound of alien machinery humming through the walls of her prison cell. 6 months of captivity aboard the Zephyrian facility had given her an intimate knowledge of the daily routines that governed her captors' lives. The lights would brighten in 17 minutes, followed by the delivery of what the aliens considered adequate nutrition for their human prisoners. She sat up on the narrow sleeping platform, her body aching from the inadequate furniture that had been designed for a different physiology. The Zephyrians were taller and thinner than humans, with joints that bent in different directions, and their accommodations reflected those differences. Everything in her cell was just slightly wrong, a constant reminder that she was far from home. But Sarah had not spent 6 months in passive captivity. Every conversation with her guards, every glimpse of alien technology, every overheard fragment of their language had been carefully cataloged and memorized. She knew the shift rotations of the security staff, the hierarchy of command, and the locations of critical systems throughout the facility. More importantly, she had established contact with other human prisoners and begun organizing resistance activities. The door to her cell hissed open, admitting Commander Zekthar, her primary interrogator. The alien was tall and imposing, with a metallic blue skin and angular features characteristic of his species. His eyes, larger than human proportions, held the cold intelligence that Sarah had learned to associate with Zephyrian military officers. "Captain Chun, I trust you slept adequately." His voice carried the mechanical precision of translated language, but Sarah had begun to detect subtle emotional undertones that the translation system couldn't fully capture. "As well as anyone can sleep in a prison, Commander." Sarah stood and faced her captor, maintaining the military bearing that had carried her through months of psychological pressure. "What can I do for the Zephyrian coalition today?" Zekthar moved to the small table that served as the only furniture besides the sleeping platform. He placed a data pad on its surface, the alien script glowing softly in patterns that Sarah had slowly begun to recognize. "Today we discuss the defensive capabilities of your Mars colonies. Our fleet will be arriving in the Sol system within the next few months, and your cooperation could prevent unnecessary casualties among your people." Sarah felt her blood chill, but forced her expression to remain neutral. The aliens had been probing for information about Earth's defenses for weeks, but this was the first time they had mentioned specific invasion plans. "I've told you before, Commander. I'm an exploration captain, not a military strategist. My knowledge of defensive systems is limited to what any civilian might know from public broadcasts. Captain, we both know that is not entirely accurate. Your ship's computer core contained detailed navigation data, including the locations of every human settlement, trade route, and communication relay in known space. We also know that you served aboard military vessels before accepting command of the Endeavor." Zekthar activated the data pad, and a holographic display materialized above the table. Sarah's breath caught as she recognized the layout of the Sol system, complete with accurate positions of space stations, defensive platforms, and patrol routes. The aliens had extracted far more from the Endeavor's computers than she had realized. "As you can see, we have significant intelligence regarding your home system. However, intelligence gathering has its limitations. We require verification of certain defensive capabilities, particularly those involving the asteroid mining platforms and their potential for military conversion. Sarah studied the display, noting both the accuracy and the limitations of alien intelligence. They had detailed information about the physical layout of human space, but they clearly didn't understand the operational doctrine that governed Earth's defensive strategy. Why are you showing me this, Commander? If you already have the information you need, my cooperation is irrelevant. Because, Captain Shun, we have observed certain inconsistencies in human behavior that concern our strategic planners. Your species appears to possess capabilities that are not reflected in your technological development. We wish to understand these capabilities before beginning occupation procedures. The alien leaned forward slightly, his large eyes fixed on Sarah's face with an intensity that suggested this conversation was more important than the routine interrogations that had preceded it. For example, the battle at Kepler demonstrated that human vessels can inflict damage far exceeding their theoretical capabilities. Your ship, designed for exploration and mining, managed to disable a coalition destroyer that should have been immune to your weapons. This suggests either superior technology or superior tactics that we have not yet identified. Sarah realized that the aliens were genuinely confused by humanity's performance in combat. Their rigid military doctrine apparently didn't account for the kind of improvisation and innovation that human crews brought to desperate situations. Perhaps you overestimated your own capabilities, Commander. It's possible that your ships aren't as invincible as your strategists believed. Zekthar's expression shifted slightly, and Sarah caught a glimpse of something that might have been irritation. Captain, the Zephyrian Coalition has conquered 47 star systems and absorbed 23 sentient species. Our military doctrine has been refined over 3 millennia of successful campaigns. It is not a matter of overestimation. Then, maybe you just picked the wrong species to attack without provocation. The words hung in the air between them, carrying a weight that surprised both participants in the conversation. Sarah had intended the statement as defiance, but as she spoke, she realized it might also be truth. Humanity had evolved through constant conflict, developing survival strategies that emphasized adaptation and innovation over rigid adherence to established patterns. Captain, you are the 43rd human prisoner we have interrogated extensively. Each of you has demonstrated the same pattern of responses: initial cooperation followed by subtle resistance, then apparent acceptance that masks continued defiance. This pattern is inconsistent with the behavior of previously conquered species. Maybe that should tell you something about the wisdom of attacking us. It tells us that humanity requires a different approach to successful integration. Which brings me to the purpose of today's discussion. Zekthar manipulated the holographic display, zooming in on Earth's defensive perimeter. We are prepared to offer your species a choice that we have not extended to previous adversaries. Sarah felt a chill of anticipation. The aliens were about to reveal something significant, and her response might determine not just her own fate, but the fate of her entire species. We propose a negotiated surrender. Your species will be granted autonomous status within the coalition, maintaining your own government and military structures under our overall authority. In exchange, you will provide technological innovation and strategic consultation to our expansion efforts in other sectors. The offer was clearly intended to be generous by alien standards, but Sarah understood the implications immediately. Humanity would become a client species, their creativity and adaptability harnessed for the benefit of an alien empire that had already demonstrated its willingness to use overwhelming force against peaceful explorers. And if we refuse this generous offer, then we proceed with standard conquest protocols. Your defensive installations will be destroyed, your government will be dissolved, and your population will be relocated to serve coalition interests in whatever capacity we deem appropriate. Sarah considered her response carefully. The aliens were clearly expecting her to accept their offer as the best available option, but she sensed an undercurrent of uncertainty in Zekthar's demeanor that suggested they were less confident than they appeared. Commander, I appreciate the information, but I'm not in a position to negotiate on behalf of my species. Even if I were, I would need to know more about the terms you're proposing and the guarantees you're willing to provide. Such as, well, for example, what happens to the human prisoners you've already taken? Are we released as part of this negotiated surrender, or do we remain in coalition custody regardless of the outcome? Zekthar paused, and Sarah realized she had identified a weakness in the alien position. They needed her cooperation, but they also needed to maintain their prisoners as leverage. The contradiction revealed something important about their strategic planning. Prisoner disposition would be determined as part of the overall agreement. However, we can offer assurance that cooperative individuals would be treated according to coalition standards for allied personnel. That's remarkably vague, Commander. It's almost as if you're making this up as you go along. The alien's reaction was subtle, but unmistakable. Sarah had scored a direct hit, identifying something that Zekthar clearly didn't want to acknowledge. The Zephyrian coalition was improvising, dealing with a situation that their 3 millennia of experience hadn't prepared them for. Captain Shun, the coalition has extensive experience in managing newly acquired species. Our protocols have been developed and refined through countless successful integrations. But not with species like humanity, apparently. Otherwise, you wouldn't need to offer special terms or conduct extended interrogations to understand our capabilities. Sarah stood and moved to the small window that looked out into the facility's central corridor. Through the transparent aluminum, she could see other prison cells, some containing human prisoners, others housing members of species she didn't recognize. The sight strengthened her resolve. Commander, I have a counter-proposal for you to take to your superiors. Release all human prisoners immediately, withdraw from human space, and we'll consider your initial attack a misunderstanding. Continue your current course, and you'll discover exactly why your 3 millennia of experience hasn't prepared you for this conflict. Zekthar's large eyes narrowed, and Sarah could sense his frustration with her refusal to accept what he clearly considered a reasonable offer. Captain, you are in no position to make demands. Your species controls 55 ships against our fleet of over 200. Your technological development is centuries behind our own. Your total population across all settlements is less than many individual coalition worlds. And yet here you are, trying to negotiate with a prisoner instead of simply proceeding with your standard conquest protocols. That suggests you're not as confident in those numbers as you'd like me to believe. The truth was that Sarah had been paying close attention to the conversations and activities she could observe from her cell. The facility showed signs of overcrowding, with prisoners arriving faster than the aliens could process them. Guard rotations had become irregular, suggesting personnel shortages. Most telling of all, she had noticed that the alien staff seemed increasingly stressed and concerned as the weeks passed. Something was happening in the broader conflict that the Zephyrians weren't sharing with their prisoners, and that something was making them nervous. Captain, your species has demonstrated certain unexpected capabilities, but you should not mistake tactical adjustments for strategic weakness. The Coalition's ultimate victory is inevitable. Maybe, but apparently, it's not going to be as easy as you expected. Sarah returned to her seat, facing Zekthar across the small table. Tell me, Commander, how many Coalition ships have been lost since you began this campaign? How many facilities have been attacked? How many of your patrol routes have been disrupted? The alien commander's silence was answer enough. Sarah realized that humanity's response to the alien aggression had been more effective than anyone in this facility was willing to admit. The negotiations weren't being offered from a position of strength, but from growing concern about the cost of conquest. I see. Well, Commander, you can report to your superiors that Captain Sarah Chun of the United Earth ship Endeavor rejects the Coalition's offer of negotiated surrender. If they want to control humanity, they're going to have to earn it. Zekthar stood abruptly, his frustration finally breaking through his professional demeanor. Captain, you are being remarkably foolish. Do you not understand the consequences of refusing Coalition authority? Understand that my species has survived ice ages, plagues, wars, and every other catastrophe our planet could throw at us. We've learned that anything worth having is worth fighting for, and that freedom is always worth the price demanded for it. As the alien commander left her cell, Sarah allowed herself a small smile of satisfaction. The interrogation had revealed far more about the Coalition situation than they had learned about human capabilities. Zekthar's questions and demeanor confirmed that the aliens were struggling with unexpected resistance and were genuinely concerned about the outcome of their invasion. Somewhere in human space, her people were fighting back, and apparently they were winning. Admiral Marcus Webb stood on the bridge of the UES Retribution, watching as the human strike force dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Ross 248 system. Around him, the largest military fleet in human history hung in space like predators preparing to strike. 57 ships of war, each one representing the combined technological and industrial might of humanity's response to alien aggression. Admiral, all ships reporting ready status, announced Captain Torres, the Retribution's commanding officer. Scout drones are deploying to map the system's defensive grid. Webb studied the tactical displays as information began flowing in from the reconnaissance probes. The Zephyrian facility was even larger than intelligence had suggested, a massive installation built into an asteroid field that provided both resources and natural camouflage. Energy signatures indicated the presence of at least 30 alien ships, with the facility itself bristling with defensive weapons. Estimated prisoner capacity? Webb asked. Analysis suggests the facility could house up to 10,000 individuals across multiple species, reported Commander Sarah Okafor, now serving as the fleet's intelligence officer. Signal intercepts confirm the presence of human prisoners, including what appears to be priority detention areas for high-value captives. Webb felt the familiar weight of command as he contemplated the upcoming battle. Every decision he made would determine not just the success of the rescue mission, but the lives of thousands of prisoners and the future of humanity's war against the Coalition. Fleet status report. All vessels armed with resonance torpedoes and adaptive targeting systems, Captain Torres reported. Dr. Vasquez's latest modifications have been installed across the entire fleet. Engineering teams report that the new weapons systems exceed design specifications in all categories. Webb nodded, thinking about the months of preparation that had brought them to this moment. Human military doctrine had evolved rapidly in response to the alien threat, incorporating lessons learned from every encounter and prisoners' report that had reached Earth. The resonance torpedoes represented just one aspect of humanity's response to superior alien shielding technology. Admiral, called Lieutenant Commander Chan from the communication station. We're receiving a transmission from the facility. They're demanding identification and statement of intentions. Put them through. The main screen flickered, displaying the angular features of a Zephyrian military commander. The alien withdraw now, and we will consider allowing your retreat. Commander, you have 10 minutes to begin prisoner release procedures. After that, we begin recovery operations with or without your cooperation. Admiral Webb, we hold over 800 human prisoners, including several of your senior military and civilian personnel. Any attack on this facility will result in their immediate execution. Webb had expected this response, but hearing the threat spoken aloud still sent cold anger through his veins. The aliens were using human lives as shields, betting that fear for their captured people would paralyze human decision-making. Commander, you've made a fundamental mistake about human psychology. We don't abandon our people, and we don't negotiate with hostage-takers. You have 10 minutes. The transmission ended, and Webb turned to address his fleet commanders through the tactical network. All ships, this is Admiral Webb. The enemy has confirmed the presence of human prisoners and has threatened their execution if we attack. This changes nothing about our mission parameters. We will recover our people, and we will make the aliens regret ever touching a human ship. The next few minutes passed in the controlled chaos of final battle preparations. Weapon systems came online across the fleet, targeting computers locked onto alien defensive positions, and strike teams prepared for boarding operations. Dr. Vasquez's modifications to the resonance torpedo systems had exceeded all expectations, providing human weapons with the ability to adapt in real time to alien defensive frequencies. Admiral, drone reconnaissance has identified what appears to be the main prisoner containment area, reported Commander Okafor. It's heavily shielded and located in the facility's core section, but our analysis suggests it's designed more for containment than protection against external attack. Meaning we can probably break in without destroying the entire structure. The aliens built this facility to keep people in, not to keep attackers out. Webb studied the tactical display, noting the positions of alien ships and defensive installations. The Zephyrians had arranged their forces in a classic defensive formation, designed to maximize their numerical and technological advantages in a conventional engagement. They were about to discover that human military thinking had evolved beyond conventional engagement parameters. Fleet commanders execute Operation Homecoming. All ships engage at will. The battle began with a coordinated strike from the human fleet's long-range weapons. Resonance torpedoes streaked across space, their adaptive targeting systems analyzing alien shield frequencies and adjusting their attack patterns accordingly. The first wave of weapons struck the facility's outer defensive grid, and the results exceeded even the most optimistic projections. Alien shields, designed to deflect or absorb conventional energy weapons, simply collapsed under the harmonic interference generated by the resonance torpedoes. Defensive platforms that should have been impregnable began exploding in brilliant flashes as their own shield generators overloaded and fed back into their power systems. "Target the mobile units," Webb ordered. "I want those ships disabled, not destroyed. We need to minimize debris around the prisoner facility." The Zephyrian fleet responded with desperate efficiency, their ships breaking formation to engage the human attackers in close combat. Energy beams lanced through space as alien commanders attempted to use their superior firepower to overwhelm individual human vessels. They quickly discovered that human ship design had evolved considerably since the Endeavor's capture. The UES Vindication, one of the newest ships in the human fleet, demonstrated the latest developments in adaptive armor and defensive systems. As Zephyrian energy beams struck her hull, the ship's outer plating absorbed and redirected the energy into her own weapon systems. The alien attack actually strengthened the human ship's combat capabilities. "Vindication to Fleet Command," reported Captain Martinez. "Alien weapons are feeding our power systems faster than they're causing damage. Request permission to close to point-blank range and demonstrate human hospitality." "Permission granted, Captain. Show them what happens when they attack our people." The Vindication accelerated directly toward the largest Zephyrian ship, her adaptive armor glowing white-hot as alien weapons poured energy into her hull. At a distance that would have been suicide for any conventional vessel, she unleashed everything she had. Resonance torpedoes struck the alien ship's shields at point-blank range, while particle beams carved through hull plating that had never been designed to withstand such close-range bombardment. The Zephyrian vessel simply came apart, its hull buckling under stresses that its designers had never anticipated. The explosion lit up the battlefield, and Webb could see other alien ships pulling back as their commanders realized that their technological superiority was not as absolute as they had believed. "Admiral, the facility is launching smaller craft," reported Commander Okafor. "Appears to be evacuation vessels rather than military units." Webb studied the sensor readings, noting the trajectory and energy signatures of the departing ships. The aliens were abandoning their position, but they might also be attempting to evacuate high-value prisoners before human forces could reach them. "All fighter squadrons, intercept those evacuation ships. Board and secure any vessels carrying human personnel. Rules of engagement are weapons-free for any ship that refuses to submit to boarding." The space around the facility erupted into dozens of smaller engagements as human fighter craft pursued fleeing alien vessels. The pilots, trained on scenarios involving hostage rescue operations, demonstrated the kind of precision flying that came from months of preparation and absolute determination to bring their people home. Lieutenant Sarah Kim, leading Raptor Squadron in the pursuit of a large evacuation vessel, found herself in a running gun battle with alien escort fighters. The enemy pilots were skilled, but they were also fighting according to established doctrine that emphasized formation flying and coordinated attacks. Kim and her squadron had trained for individual initiative and adaptive tactics, techniques that allowed them to exploit openings that alien pilots didn't even recognize as vulnerabilities. Raptor leader to Raptor Squadron, these aliens fly like they're performing a parade demonstration. Break formation and show them what independent thinking looks like. The human fighters scattered into individual attack patterns, each pilot choosing their own approach to the enemy formation. The result was chaos for the alien defenders, who found themselves facing attacks from unexpected angles by opponents who refused to follow predictable patterns. Within minutes, the escort fighters were either destroyed or fleeing, leaving the evacuation vessel vulnerable to boarding. Kim's squadron used capture nets and magnetic grapples to lock onto the alien ship, then deployed assault teams to secure the vessel and its cargo. Fleet Command, this is Raptor Leader. We have secured the evacuation vessel, and it's carrying human prisoners. Confirmed sighting of Captain Sarah Chun among the rescued personnel. Webb felt a surge of relief and satisfaction as the first phase of the rescue operation succeeded. Captain Chin's capture had been a catalyst for humanity's war against the Coalition, and her recovery represented more than just tactical success. Raptor Leader, secure all prisoners and prepare for immediate evacuation to the medical ship. All squadron commanders, report prisoner recovery status. The reports that followed confirmed that the rescue operation was succeeding beyond all expectations. Human forces had intercepted multiple evacuation vessels, recovering hundreds of prisoners from dozens of different species. The aliens had apparently been using the facility as a central processing center for captives from across their expanding empire. But the most significant discovery came from the facility itself as human Marines began their assault on the main installation. The boarding teams, equipped with portable resonance generators and adaptive armor, found that alien internal security was designed primarily to contain prisoners, not repel military assault. Admiral, this is Colonel Martinez commanding the assault teams. We have breached the main prisoner complex, and the situation is remarkable. Explain, Colonel. Sir, we found evidence of organized prisoner resistance throughout the facility. The aliens have been dealing with constant sabotage, escape attempts, and what appears to be coordinated intelligence gathering. The prisoners weren't just waiting to be rescued, Admiral. They've been conducting their own war. Webb realized that humanity's response to the alien threat hadn't been limited to military action. Even in captivity, human prisoners had maintained their fighting spirit and continued to resist their captors through whatever means available to them. The final phase of the battle saw the complete collapse of Zephyrian resistance as human forces secured the facility and began processing the massive intelligence treasure trove contained in alien computer systems. The resonance torpedo technology had proven devastatingly effective against alien defenses, while human tactics had consistently outmaneuvered enemy responses. But perhaps most importantly, the operation had demonstrated that humanity's strength lay not just in their weapons or ships, but in their absolute refusal to abandon their own people. Every human prisoner recovered represented a victory that went beyond tactical success to the very core of what made humanity dangerous to their enemies. As the last alien ship fled the system, Admiral Webb looked out at the facility that had housed so much suffering and realized that this was just the beginning. The Zephyrian Coalition had started this war with unprovoked aggression and the capture of innocent explorers. Humanity was going to finish it. Fleet Commander Vextar stood in the command center of the Coalition's primary battle station, staring at tactical displays that told a story of systematic defeat across multiple star systems. 6 months ago, the humans had been a minor species of primitives with limited technology and no significant military capability. Now, they were carving through Coalition space with a relentless efficiency that had shattered 3 millennia of military doctrine. Commander, we have received another request for reinforcements from the Altair sector, reported Subcommander Krayesh, his voice carrying the strain that had become common among Coalition officers. The human fleet has destroyed our patrol bases in 3 systems and is moving toward the main supply depot. Vextar manipulated the holographic display, studying the pattern of human attacks across the outer territories. What he saw defied every principle of military strategy that the Coalition had developed over its long history of expansion. The humans weren't attempting to hold territory or establish defensive positions. Instead, they were conducting what could only be described as a war of extermination, targeting Coalition infrastructure with surgical precision while avoiding civilian populations. What is the current status of our fleet strength in the affected sectors? We have lost 47 ships in the past month alone, Commander. Human weapons technology has evolved far beyond our intelligence projections, and their tactical adaptations consistently outmaneuver our standard engagement protocols. Vextar felt the weight of impending disaster as he processed the numbers. The Coalition's military machine was designed for expansion and occupation, not for the kind of sustained defensive warfare that the humans had forced upon them. More troubling still, every engagement with human forces revealed new capabilities that suggested their technological development was accelerating at an unprecedented rate. "Sir," called the communications officer, "we have an incoming priority transmission from the High Council. They are demanding a full strategic assessment and recommendations for ending the human conflict." The transmission screen activated, revealing the assembled leadership of the Zephyrian Coalition. 7 alien figures, each representing a different conquered species that had been integrated into the Coalition's hierarchy, sat in judgment of the military failure that was unfolding across their empire. "Fleet Commander Vextar," spoke Councilor Nexus, the ancient leader whose species had founded the Coalition, explained to this council how a primitive species with 57 ships has managed to cripple our expansion efforts and threaten our established territories. Vextar straightened his uniform, knowing that his next words would determine not just his own fate, but possibly the future of the entire Coalition. "Honored counselors, the human species has demonstrated capabilities that our initial intelligence assessments failed to predict. Their technological development appears to be accelerating in response to military pressure, and their tactical doctrine emphasizes adaptation over established protocol. Are you suggesting, Commander, that our 3,000-year military tradition is inferior to the improvised strategies of a species that achieved spaceflight less than 2 centuries ago?" The question carried implications that Vextar understood all too well. Admitting that human tactics were superior would undermine the fundamental assumptions upon which Coalition authority rested. But denying the evidence of systematic military defeat would be an equally fatal mistake. "Counselors, I am suggesting that humanity represents a fundamentally different type of opponent than any we have previously encountered. Their response to conquest attempts has been to evolve beyond our ability to predict or counter their capabilities." Councilor Nexus leaned forward, his ancient eyes fixed on Vextar with cold intensity. "Commander, evolution is a process that requires generations to produce significant change. You are describing impossible alterations in capability occurring over the span of months. With respect, Counselor, human evolution appears to be technological and tactical rather than biological. Each engagement with their forces reveals new weapons, new strategies, and new approaches to warfare that our standard responses cannot effectively counter." The truth was more disturbing than Vextar was willing to admit openly. Human forces weren't just adapting to Coalition tactics. They were learning from every encounter and developing countermeasures faster than Coalition strategists could analyze their own failures. It was as if the humans possessed some form of collective intelligence that allowed them to share experiences and innovations across their entire military structure. "Fleet Commander," interrupted Councilor Vexara, representing one of the more recently conquered species, "what specific recommendations do you have for resolving this situation?" Vextar had been dreading this question, knowing that his honest assessment would be unacceptable to the Coalition leadership, but that any alternative recommendation would lead to continued disaster. "Counselors, I believe we should consider negotiating a peace settlement with the human government. Our intelligence indicates that they are primarily interested in recovering their captured personnel and securing guarantees against future aggression. We could potentially end this conflict through diplomatic means." The silence that followed his statement told Vextar everything he needed to know about the Council's reaction to his proposal. The Coalition had never negotiated peace from a position of weakness, and the precedent would undermine their authority throughout their empire. "Commander," Councilor Nexus finally spoke, "the Coalition does not negotiate with rebellious species. We will explore alternative solutions to the human problem." The transmission ended, leaving Vextar alone with the knowledge that his military career was effectively over. More importantly, he realized that the Coalition leadership was preparing to escalate the conflict rather than seek resolution through diplomacy. 3 days later, the escalation began. Admiral Marcus Webb received the intelligence report while reviewing battle plans for the next phase of human operations. The information came from intercepted coalition communications and confirmed his worst fears about the aliens' intentions. Admiral, reported Colonel Martinez, recently promoted after the success of the prison facility assault, coalition forces are massing for what appears to be a direct assault on Earth itself. Intelligence estimates suggest they're deploying their entire reserve fleet, over 300 ships. Webb studied the tactical projections, noting the massive scale of the alien response to human operations. The coalition was apparently abandoning their expansion efforts in other sectors to concentrate overwhelming force against humanity's home system. Time to arrival? Approximately 3 weeks, assuming they maintain current acceleration profiles. They're coming through the outer colonies, probably planning to use captured human facilities as staging areas. Webb realized that humanity had reached the critical juncture he had always known was inevitable. The success of their military operations had forced the aliens to commit everything to a final decisive battle. If Earth fell, the entire human resistance would collapse. If the coalition fleet was defeated, their empire would likely fragment under the pressure of multiple rebellions. Colonel, initiate the Prometheus Protocol. I want every ship we have operational and every defensive system online within 72 hours. The Prometheus Protocol represented the culmination of human military preparation since the beginning of the conflict. Every shipyard, every research facility, and every military base in human space have been working toward this moment. The protocol would transform Earth's solar system into the most heavily defended location in known space, but it would also commit humanity's entire military capability to a single decisive engagement. Sir, implementing Prometheus will leave our outer colonies completely undefended. Understood. But if we lose Earth, the colonies won't matter anyway. The weeks that followed saw the most intensive military preparation in human history. Ships arrived from across human space, carrying crews that had been fighting the coalition for months. New weapons systems, developed in secret research facilities, were installed on every available platform. The asteroid belt was converted into a defensive minefield that would make approach to Earth a nightmare for any attacking fleet. But, perhaps most importantly, the human fleet was reinforced by an unexpected source of support. Admiral Webb, reported Captain Shun, recently rescued from coalition captivity and restored to active duty. We have incoming transmissions from multiple alien species. It appears that several coalition client species are requesting permission to join our defensive efforts. The intelligence that followed revealed the broader implications of humanity's war against the coalition. The human example of successful resistance had inspired rebellion throughout the alien empire, with multiple species attempting to break free from coalition control. The massive fleet heading toward Earth represented not just the coalition's attempt to crush humanity, but their desperate effort to maintain control over their fragmenting empire. How many potential allies are we looking at? Difficult to estimate precisely, but intelligence suggests that at least 12 species are in various stages of rebellion against coalition authority. Several of them have significant military capabilities that could affect the outcome of the coming battle. Webb realized that the conflict had evolved beyond a simple war between humanity and the Zephyrian coalition. The human refusal to submit to alien authority had triggered a galaxy-wide crisis that would determine the future of interstellar civilization. When the coalition fleet finally arrived at the edge of the Sol system, they found themselves facing not just the human forces they had expected, but a coalition of rebel species that had united under the banner of freedom that humanity had carried into space. The battle that followed would later be remembered as the end of the old Galactic Order. Coalition forces designed for conquest and intimidation found themselves facing an alliance of species that fought with the desperation of beings who had nothing left to lose and everything to gain. Human ships, equipped with weapons that had been impossible to imagine a year earlier, carved through alien formations with deadly efficiency. The resonance torpedo technology had evolved into adaptive weapons systems that could reconfigure themselves in real time to counter any defensive measures. More importantly, human tactical doctrine had developed into a form of warfare that emphasized innovation, adaptation, and individual initiative over rigid adherence to established patterns. The turning point came when Captain Shun, commanding the rebuilt UES Endeavor, led a desperate assault on the Coalition flagship. Her ship, carrying the latest in human weapons technology and crewed by veterans of dozens of battles against alien forces, punched through the enemy defensive screen and engaged Fleet Commander Vexstar's massive battle station in single combat. The engagement lasted less than 30 minutes, but it demonstrated to both fleets that human determination could overcome any technological advantage. The Endeavor, outgunned and outnumbered, systematically dismantled the Coalition flagship through superior tactics and weaponry that adapted faster than alien defenses could respond. When Vexstar's ship finally exploded, the Coalition fleet lost more than just their commanding officer. They lost the psychological advantage that had sustained their empire for 3 millennia, the belief that their military superiority was absolute, and their authority was unquestionable. The remaining Coalition ships fled the Sol system in complete disorder, many of them surrendering to rebel forces rather than attempting to continue a war they could no longer hope to win. In the aftermath of the battle, Admiral Webb stood once again on the bridge of the Retribution, watching as alien ships were escorted to processing facilities where their crews would be held according to the rules of war that humanity had established. The victory was complete, but the cost had been enormous. Human losses included over 30 ships and thousands of crew members who had died defending their home system. Admiral, reported Captain Torres, were receiving surrender requests from Coalition forces in 17 different star systems. It appears that news of our victory has triggered the complete collapse of their military authority. Webb nodded, feeling the weight of victory settling over him. Humanity had won the war, but they had also inherited responsibility for maintaining peace across a galaxy that was still learning what freedom meant. Send word to all Coalition commanders that we will accept their surrender under the following terms: immediate release of all prisoners, withdrawal from all conquered territories, and cooperation with war crimes tribunals to be established by the liberated species. And if they refuse, Admiral, Webb looked out at the stars that had once seemed so peaceful and welcoming, now transformed by war into a vast battlefield where the future of civilization had been decided by courage, determination, and humanity's absolute refusal to surrender. Then, we continue the war until they understand that freedom is not negotiable. The Galactic War, as historians would later name the conflict, had lasted less than 2 years. But its effects would reshape interstellar civilization for millennia to come. Humanity had proven that no empire, regardless of its age or power, could survive contact with a species that valued freedom above survival and innovation above tradition. The galaxy would never be the same.